let me go to my guests. I see him here. I am joined with the man himself, Daniel McAdams. How you doing, Daniel? You doing okay today?
Hey, Jamal, how you doing? Great to see you again.
It is good to see you, man. I hadn't talked to you in a while, and I wanted to check up on you. Daniel McAdams, he is executive director of the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity. You can learn more about Daniel's work at Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity by going to ronpaulinstitute.org. Daniel, you are the person I wanted to talk to because I'm very curious about what's going on. Let's say, what is in your mind of Trump sending military? Apparently, the appeals court has ruled that Donald Trump does have the power to randomly send military from one city or from one state to another state, even though there's nothing going in that state that will require the National Guard. Give me your thoughts on this. I'm very curious on your where you sit in the political aisle, well, let's say the political spectrum. How do you view this?
Well, you make a great point, which is that there is no insurrection anywhere in the country. There's no the original intent of the National Guard, which became renamed in the early part of the 20th century, late 19th, early 20th century, was to quell any insurrections. That was what the framers had in mind. There was
Hmm.
never the idea that there would be a standing army that the president has exclusive use of to use against American citizens. That would be anathema to people like Patrick Henry, who helped, craft and frame what our country's all about. It's just never part of their thinking.
Are you surprised that there's been no pushback to this? I mean, the people in Chicago, obviously, they feel some kind of way about it because this is this kind of proto-fascism stuff where you're effectively using the military for your own ends as a president to go after what you consider to be political hotspots in the country. But no response from people who, usually decry this idea of government overreach. Oh my God, the federal government is going after people. Or, oh my God, Joe Biden is using the federal apparatus to go after his political opposition. None of these people have said a word. They've just let the president do what the president is doing.
Well, Jamal, these are the bad guys. They deserve it, right? That's the way of thinking. I mean, it's unbelievably juvenile, infantile thinking that yeah, we're gonna finally get them, and it's very difficult for those of us who are not in support of the riots that happened in 2020, for example, who do not adhere to the Antifa worldview, who do not like the cities to be in turmoil and chaos. We're
Right.
between a rock and a hard place because it's like on the one hand, yeah, there has to be something done. You can't just let these people run roughshod and destroy people's lives and businesses. But on the other hand, you can't use an atom bomb to kill a cockroach, right? I mean, but we get hit with. I mean, if you go on social media and you say anything like that, all the Trump people are screaming. You are just nothing. You're a liberal. You're nobody, and it's really really dangerous. They're empowering something. I mean, and you try to convince them. Listen, guys, there's going to be someone coming into power next. It may not be the next president, but it'll be one down the road. This dystopia that you're creating here, you think they're not going to unleash it on you times 1,000? Are you
Yes.
people stupid? The answer, I hate to say it, yes.
See, I always think those people are either fascists or cultists. And the reason why I use those terms almost literally. There are some people like you who would look at this and say, America matters more. Like, I mean, regardless of what my political ambitions are, the country has a rule of law that matters more, and that there are going to be political consequences for us doing what we're doing here and supporting this. Because the next guy that comes in, I mean, this is a whole Joe Biden issue, right? Joe Biden spends all of this time trying to go after Trump, trying to put him in a cage in order to prevent him from running again. And then Trump gets in office and effectively uses the political apparatus and takes it to either a higher degree in the way that it is being used by going so far as to put military in American cities. They don't seem to make the connection unless in their minds, where Trump is just going to be king from here on out. Otherwise, I don't know how they're missing that this can flip and this can flip in the other direction.
And it will, but it'll get worse each time it flips, because the one side is more PO'd. The Trump people are rightly angry at what was done to Trump. All this
Yes.
lawfare against him, they're rightly angry, righteously angry. I wanted Trump to win because I thought it would be a triumph against this kind of use of lawfare. Little did I know that because the genie was let out of the bottle, it was going to take some steroids and get a million times worse. There's no rational thinking on this. I heard a little bit of your previous segment, just like there's no rational thinking on this unbelievably evil idea that you just shoot boats out of the water without having any idea who's in them. I mean, and if you challenge that, I mean, Senator Paul challenged that yesterday, and if you go onto the X thread where he challenged it, I mean, it was vile.
Really?
What the hell is wrong with this country? What is going on here?
How do they think that? And you know what makes it even worse? The Senate put a bill up, and the Senate rejects a measure to stop Trump from unilaterally striking Venezuelan boats. 48-51. This was effectively, the Senate comes out and says, hey, maybe the president shouldn't be allowed to just randomly murder people and just to come up with some kind of rationale to do it. The Senate is like, no, he should be able to do that. That's perfectly okay. We're fine with the president doing that. That's astonishing. That is astonishing. For one, I'm almost shocked that they even put this up for a vote.
On this vote,
I mean,
No, go ahead. I'm speechless on this, that they think this is okay.
They're enablers. They're enablers of this. And, Congress at the least should demand a plan, some oversight, what's going on. Again, I mean, just going back to the framers of our Constitution, they never had the idea that the United States military was a personal toy in the hands of the President of the United States. He is the commander-in-chief only when the U.S. Congress declares war. And Congress has just abrogated that responsibility. I mean, it makes those of us who don't like what we're seeing, almost wish for a split government, where you have a Democrat-controlled, at least House or Senate, someone to put the brakes on. Even if it's probably going to be for all the wrong reasons, because it's just about pure power, just raw exercise of raw power.
Well, to make your blood boil even further, obviously, when Donald Trump gave that deranged speech with Hegseth, where he told the military personnel, some of you are going to be going to the various cities across the United States. Okay, that's pretty outrageous. They've been asking and playing around with this idea of getting rid of invoking the Insurrection Act. And again, as I keep telling the public, there is nothing there. He's just making this up as he's going along. Antifa is a problem. These left-wingers who are going after whoever is a problem. Portland is an issue. Chicago is an issue. So yeah, I'm going to bring in the feds. So I'm going to use DHS in order to go after all of these people because the government in those cities is not necessarily doing their job. Despite, as I keep pointing out, there's higher crime in other parts of the country than the areas that Donald Trump is effectively focusing on. It's gotten so bad that they're even asking him stuff like this. I mean, think of what would have to take place for somebody to ask the president this question.
I also have two questions for you, if I may. Have you given any more thought to possibly suspending habeas corpus to not only deal with these insurrectionists across the nation, but also to continue rapidly deporting illegal aliens?
Yeah, it's suspending who?
Habeas corpus. So.
Oh, I don't know. I'd rather leave that to Christy. What do you think?
No, sir, I haven't been a part of any discussions on that.
Notice the language. These insurrectionists, the language is being used as a gateway of saying, well, maybe you should invoke the Insurrection Act. And even the idea that you're asking him, hey, maybe you need to get rid of habeas corpus. I don't think people are getting how dangerous this is. Do you think this is a playbook? Meaning, do you think that this is some plan that Trump is enacting where either he is trying to create some kind of proto-fascist state where there's military in various parts of the United States. And so at some point in a plan where he knows there's going to be a backlash, that military or these elements of DHS will already be on the ground? Or do you think this is more haphazard? Because this doesn't seem haphazard to me. This seems like they are running with a very specific language that they're trying to create a justification to invoke Insurrection Act. And this guy's even talking about removing habeas corpus. Give me your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I prefer the word authoritarian, but, that's just one's personal preference. I think fascism is corporatism, but
fair enough.
But nevertheless, the one thing that struck me about that exchange that you just put on, Jamarl, is that President Trump didn't seem to know what the hell the guy was talking about. If you
Right.
notice,
He didn't know what it
and
was.
maybe his hearing is going and happens when you get older, and he doesn't want to wear a hearing aid. That's understandable. But when he was asked that, he said, "What was that?" And he told him again, and he said, "I'm just going to defer to Christie on that." I just get the sense that he didn't know what that meant, and that speaks to something else because you're asking if there's a grand Trump plan. I'm starting to wonder. I've started to wonder for a while now, something like what Seymour Hersh wrote a couple of days ago, that the president is kind of losing his grip on reality. And we're seeing speech after speech. He's basically saying the exact same things.
Mhm.
And people are saying this too in his first term. He would play off people. He would mix it up, and now he just goes and he sort of sits there. This war would have never happened if I was president, and the same rehearsed, tired lines, and he even used it on the generals last week, was it, or earlier this week? So I don't know. We lived through 4 years of Joe Biden in this situation. We
Mhm.
know that he was being handled by very ambitious people who were pulling the rug over their boss. I'm starting to wonder if people like Stephen Miller and others like that who are extremely ambitious. Now, Miller, if you see some of the stuff that he says, if you hear some of his speeches, this guy is inflamed.
Yes.
Let's put it that way. This guy, you look up authoritarian in a dictionary, and this guy's face pops up. So I wonder if they're running circles around Trump. We know he's not very curious. We know he's not into details. We know he's a showman. So someone like a Stephen Miller could run roughshod over him. Stephen Miller, his son-in-law Kushner, all these guys. I don't know, it's speculation, but I'm being more and more convinced that there's something to this supposition.
But they have been blowing off habeas corpus. I mean, when they're sending ICE agents out to these various locations, they're wearing masks. They're not having identification on themselves. They're snatching people out of their homes. I mean, when they rappelled down with Black Hawk helicopters, they were kicking in doors. They were snatching Americans out and holding them in the back of vans. And it's like, all right, building's clear. You guys can leave now. Okay, A, they don't even know who you are. B, you're not even necessarily identifying yourself. You're just kicking in doors. See, these people, Americans, and they have a right to effectively be within their homes and have a warrant or something for you to snatch them out of their home. None of that stuff has been mattering to these agents in the way that they've been operating. For all intents and purposes, they have removed habeas corpus in the way that they're operating. But correct me if I'm wrong on this.
Well, back when they wanted to create the Department of Homeland Security, Ron Paul said, "No way. They said, oh, Ron, it's about terrorists. What's wrong with you? Don't you remember 9/11? It's only about terrorists." And you can go back and look at the speeches. He said, "This force that you unleash is going to be used against Americans, not against a bunch of foreigner terrorists." That's exactly what's come to be now. It's become the exact kind of Gestapo that Ron Paul warned about back in the early 2000s, and nobody wanted to listen. So here we go. I mean, we sowed the wind, we're reaping the whirlwind.
What is Ron Paul thinking right now? Especially, as you point out, Ron Paul was right. That whatever you're going to call it in the beginning, it will invariably get back to us. He was dead on. Like Barbara Lee. When Barbara Lee, I remember when the Iraq War took place. It's one of my first memories in politics. And Barbara Lee gets up there, she gives that speech with all this immense pressure on her. And she's like, we are going to regret this. Now, everybody else was going to hope. They was like, yeah, let's go kill somebody. And she was like, we're going to regret this. This is a horrible idea, etc. And she ended up being right. It's like the single lone voice. And I get the sense that Ron Paul was the same way. Everybody else was gung ho. Hey, let's go after the terrorists. Let's create this organization. We got hit on 9/11. And if you watch Tucker Carlson's documentary, that is worrying, to put it mildly, because it means that the CIA knew exactly what was taking place, that they royally screwed up, didn't give the FBI any kind of warning of what was taking, meaning what they used as a pretext for war was a failing of the United States. And Homeland Security was one of those organizations that sprung out of that organization that is now being used to go after Americans. I find this to be outrageous. I find all of it to be outrageous. And there's no pushback to this. None.
No, it's like Professor Higgs when he, in his book, Crisis in Leviathan, every time there's a crisis, the government uses it as an opportunity to grab more
More
more power. And that's what happened. I mean, we have Homeland Security. We have all sorts of things that were created. We created the Department of National Intelligence, the DNI, because the CIA wasn't doing its job. So let's get a bigger one that's even more encompassing. This is what they do. It never ratchets back down. It only ratchets up. More and more government, more and more surveillance on American citizens. And it's very dangerous. 9/11. I haven't watched Tucker's documentary. I'm going to try to do that. It's just hard to sit still for a long time. Yeah,
It
I
is
really
good.
like to, but it
It's
certainly
very
was a
angry.
gift. Yeah, it's a gift to the authoritarian state, whoever was responsible for it.
Oh, I'm not applying. I can't get over the hurdle of thinking that the U.S. government did this. That's too big of a hurdle for me. I know some people
Or
make that hurdle.
rogue elements,
Um,
maybe. I don't know, but I mean, I'm certainly willing to. I mean, I was on the dark side. I would be willing to understand that there would be rogue elements who would let something like this happen at the very least. Who knows?
yeah,
We'll know.
Building 7
Maybe
is
our grandchildren will know. We probably won't know.
Building 7 is weird to me. Nobody has ever given me a good explanation for Building 7. The way Tucker explains it, just as a nutshell, is that the CIA was trying to find an asset in Al Qaeda. And their thought was, okay, well, we'll track these people who are going all over the world. And at some point, they found that the guy had a passport for the United States. So their thought was, well, when he gets into the US, we'll convert him. We'll try to get him to come over to our outside, and he'll be an asset for it. When they was like, well, hey, this guy's obviously a terrorist. There's obviously been warnings that something big is taking place. And the CIA is effectively like, nah, we won't alert their FBI. We'll just follow the guy. And effectively, they lost track of him on some level. Finally, they alert the FBI. But the president is being warned for months. Something big is happening. Something really, really big is going to happen. Something super big is happening. The red lights are blinking, etc. They're getting warning after warning after warning. And finally, at the last minute, they get a warning about Al Qaeda. And I forget who told them this, but it was like, will you please stop telling me about the damn Al Qaeda? And a couple of days later, we get hit on 9/11. And so Tucker seems to be making the argument that somebody knew because somebody was betting against airlines, which is a clear indication that somebody knew and was betting against the specific airlines that were used. And B, the CIA royally messed up. And in messing up, immediately went into a cover-up mode where they can blame, well, it was the Saudis, it was this person, it was that person, it was Al Qaeda, it was everybody else. In which case, all of the stuff gets muddled. And then you have an investigation that really is not an investigation because everything in their power was done to prevent a real investigation from taking place. Oh, it is angering. It is very it is mind-blowing.
Like Charlie. Sounds like the Charlie Kirk shooting, right? You never have a real investigation. Who was behind it?
Well, there's supposed to be a trial. That's supposed to be an investigation, right? Yeah. Supposed to be. Where do you think this is going? I look at this and I am deeply concerned because my concern goes into a fracturing of America itself. And some people may think that's hyperbolic, but I look at not just this, I look at the other stuff. Like we are talking in the moment where the government is shut down. There are air flight controllers that just didn't show up to work, where the flight delays as a result of not having air flight controllers that are at the airports. Like these are very basic things for a government to be able to do. The government and the political branch seems to be completely incapable of just doing basic things. And you have, I don't know if you've read this book, End Times, by Peter Turchin. He talks about this kind of overproduction of elites, where your society gets so ossified that the ability to be able to do basic things for the population that is immiserated and is in bad shape, that requires the government to work, it just doesn't work. And over, let's say, 200-300-year periods, you get governments that fall into revolutions, that comes into these kind of changes, because that's usually the horizon and the time frame where these revolutions take place unless something is done politically. And he talked about FDR, where FDR passed the New Deal, which was kind of a reset of sorts. I don't see a reset. I don't see a political branch that works. And what I do see is a political branch that is now overwhelmingly abusing presidential authority. Where do you think this is going? And am I being too cynical about this in the way that I look at this, where it's like a fracturing of America? Those people are going to respond. Like when they're putting military in the cities, the city is not just going to say, oh, well, he puts military here. There's going to be a backlash as a result of it. And maybe he wants the backlash. But where do you think this goes?
The real issue is that the R's and D's are not really divided by any sort of ideological issue. They're both in love with power. That's the only thing they care about. So there's no room for more rational voices. Look what happens to a Thomas Massey, who just says we shouldn't be sending all this foreign aid.
Yes.
Congress needs to pass the appropriations bills like that was designed. Um, he's anathema. He's just a sane voice saying
Yeah.
we have to do these things the right way, and he's anathema. The government shouldn't be shut down. Speaker Johnson is too busy passing 850 "We Love Israel" bills to actually
No.
just sit down and do the appropriations bills. Pass the appropriations, fund the government for the next year, and then you can move on and rename your post offices and whatever the hell you want to do. He won't do that. He can't do that. It's a non-functioning government, and it was the same under Pelosi as well. They're
Yes.
incapable of functioning. They can't.
Do you think they just don't care? I mean, like, this is one of those things where somebody will have to be behind the scenes and see how this stuff works. But if you were, let's say, in Congress, let's say 20 years ago versus now, is there a difference in the way that these people think and the way that they operate?
Well, we were in there 20 years ago, so I can actually speak from experience. And
Thank you.
it wasn't perfect back then, but we did pass appropriations bills. We did have open debate on the floor. Individual members did have the ability, with certain rules, to introduce amendments to appropriations bills and thereby have speaking slots on the floor and make things known. They had the ability to make coalitions, and that's you mentioned Barbara Lee. That's one of the things that Dr. Paul and a few others did. They built these coalitions of progressives and conservatives and libertarians, and they would all go down to the floor and get 20 minutes or get 30 minutes, and they would all talk about a bill. That doesn't exist anymore as far as I can see. That's completely gone. So even just in this 20 years since we've been in the House, there's been a huge change. There would never be the kind of foul language. And if you look when
Yes.
one of the
Yes.
members or senators questions someone, they're extremely rude. You would never see that. Now there was some of that, but not like it is today. All of these gotcha questions. You look at Pam Bondi down there. Everything is a gotcha question. And so it really, I mean, I'm going to tell you, Jamal, it's almost like a cliche or a meme, but idiocracy is definitely reality, I think, when it comes
What
to our house.
changed? Like, that's the part that blows my mind. Like, what changed? Like, Daniel Lazar talks about how the political system is ossified and that there needs to be a revolution. Like, he goes further to the left in this case. Like, there needs to be a change. There needs to be a revolution. Love Dan. Dan Lazar is a fantastic guest. The man is brilliant, but he freaks me out with the stuff because I don't trust the people who would be at the helm of that in the various states, right? And the moment that you open that box, like, you don't know what comes out that box, right? And so it's like, do you love the devil that you got, or do you love the unknown? And some people, I'm getting to the point of saying the unknown is a better option, which is terrifying when I think about it, because something needs to change, and this doesn't work. What
Yeah.
happened? That's the part that I'm confused by. It's not like the Constitution has changed over the course of all of this time. That's Daniel's argument. We have a 200 or something year old document. It needs to be updated to our current reality. But it worked at one point. And it seems like it's the people that have changed, not the document per se. It's the way that people engage with each other. This is not my right honorable gentleman. This is an enemy. And
Yeah.
even if you're like Tipper and Reagan, okay, they may have said bad things about each other, but they still could come together to work in a way that didn't seem to be, like you stab them in a phone booth if you got the opportunity to do so. Something seems to have just fundamentally changed in the way that these guys act. And I don't know what it is.
Well, the stakes are too high and they're too concentrated in Washington, D.C. I mean, I think if we readopted the principle of subsidiarity, where the government closest to you is the one that should be the first line, rather than everything to D.C., because what you see is people that run D.C. are people that make billions of dollars off the backs of the American worker and the American middle class, because starting wars that are never meant to be won but meant to be continuous is enormously profitable. And you literally suck the blood out of the American working man and woman
Yes.
to fuel this like fever dream of great riches. So until we can reduce the power of the federal government over us and devolve that power back down to the states, to the localities, to your city council, there's no escaping it. We can't stop these people. They can't be stopped.
But wasn't that true 20 years ago? Or it wasn't true 20 years ago? Or they
Not
just
to the
got
degree.
better crooks. They just got
Yeah,
to be
not
better
to-
crooks.
Yeah, not to the degree that it is now, I think. And, I think that's just, the stakes are higher and higher now. There's more money involved, and they're going in there to grab it, and we're not sending our best, right?
Well, Daniel, somebody asked me to ask, how do we protect ourselves from this? Especially if this is going as dark as I think it's going.
I definitely would not be in any of these big cities. That's for sure.
What does that move to the mountains?
Move to the mountains.
Got to move off the grid.
Become a hermit. There are, I mean, there's nothing you can do. I mean, I would say there are amendments that you could exercise your right to, but even that would not be helpful, I don't think, when you have Black Hawk helicopters showing up with people busting down your doors. I mean, it's a dark time. That's all I can say, Jamal. It's a very dark and dangerous time.
It sounds like this is a movement issue, not an individual issue. Like this is a public saying no and putting their bodies on the line and saying no.
Yeah. Who knows? Everyone has to do it their own way.
Daniel, thank you for this. Honestly, I really do appreciate your point of view. And Ron Paul was right. I mean, people like, I think the sad part and the flaw, they always said the youth is wasted on the young. And as I get older, I'm realizing that's so true. Because you're presented with things. And as you're presented with things, you can't see the consequences of those things in your 20s or even sometimes in your 30s. And Ron Paul, who probably was in his 50s.
Yeah.
You can't see it.
Yeah.
He saw it. He saw it. Daniel, you have a fantastic rest of your day, man. Thank you for this. I really appreciate
Thanks.
it. Daniel McAdams.
You too, my friend.
He is director of Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity. You can learn more about Daniel's work by going to ronpaulinstitute.org. Daniel, always enjoy talking to you, man. Thank you for this. You be safe, okay?
Thanks so much, my friend. Take care.
Bye-bye. All right. We have come to the end.